Shambhavi and welcome back to Shambhavi Speaks. So today I'm going to do something that I love to do, that is to interview people. Joining me today are two very amazingly talented people all the way from LA, and their names are Beck and Yasmin Ghasiri. Beck is an actor, writer and director. On the other hand, Yasmin is also an actor, writer and a producer. So please watch this entire video because we'll be talking about some very important issues that must be addressed in today's world. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and do not forget to comment and subscribe. So welcome to Shambhavi Speaks, Yasmin and Beck. I hope I'm pronouncing your names in a right way. So correct me if I'm wrong there. You guys won the Spark Award and so tell us about it a bit before we dive into the questions.
Very excited and grateful to have been accepted into the Loon Short Film Festival this year. And I believe it's the first time they presented the Spark Award. So that was really exciting.
It was really cool that we got the Spark Award specifically because it's for proof of concept, which is what we want, basically what we're making. We have plans to take they said to a higher level. And so it felt good, like it was reassuring that there's something about our unique story that resonates with people who may not necessarily be non-binary, because there's a human quality and we want our show to, just be like, hey, we're here, we exist for people, and we have regular issues as well.
Okay, since you both are whole and soul making content on queer issue, LGBTQI issues, so what are the challenges that you face and how did this idea pop up in your minds together?
Well, I think the idea started, we went to college, so we've known each other for a while, and we've been wanting to make something together, because we've both found that it's hard to find reliable people. And after we both cut all our hair off, we were like, wait a second, there's something here with the hair that we both have now.
Yeah, it was kind of like playing on the, we're both non-binary and we have a lot of similarities, but also we have differences too. So we kind of want to play with that, what would it be like for two people that other people would assume would have so much in common? Like, what if they didn't, Everything's personality based, right? So, playing with the fact that, we have similarities, but also twisting that whole kind of, misconceptions of like everyone, if you're non-binary, you're just like this, or, it just kind of showing a variety.
Yeah, and for quarantine, for some of the challenges with quarantine was we actually had to cut like 4 episodes that we wanted to write because they were going to involve other people, and so we wrote a few more, which was unfortunate because we wanted to show how it's like living in the world as a non-binary person, but it kind of like was a good thing because we made a pact, that we were only going to shoot with each other and like we wouldn't see anybody else, which made a lot of challenges because we literally shot everything ourselves in addition to acting.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was a good challenge, but I think honestly probably just made us stronger as creators. We didn't have any crew, we didn't have anything, but we had to just really make sure that everything was spot on. We had to be holding the camera, we had to test sound, we had to do everything. We did, and so it's like it's just kind of one of those things where you really have to plan ahead of time, do the best you can with that, and then also roll with the punches. Like, oh shoot, that was different than we expected. How are we gonna fix that? We messed up lighting. Okay, now we got to reshoot that. Things like that. I think overall it was definitely fun, but harder than when you do have a crew with you. So.
That's true. But kudos and congratulations to both of you. It was very interesting to watch you guys. And guys, so in India, more or less, many people have a coming out story, Is that the same for you guys, and is it the same for your peers out there?
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people have coming out stories. Are you asking about ours, like, specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think I think it's like different because I feel like, at least for me, first I came out as gay, and I had to come out as non-binary, and that had cut off all my hair. So it's kind of a constant process, and I'm half Persian, and it was actually an Indian non-binary person who I was listening to on this podcast called Nancy, and he was saying, when you're brown, you do not have the big coming out thing. Like, that's like a white person thing, and I really felt that pressure, like, and my dad's very accepting, like, my Persian family, even in Iran, they're very accepting, but I did feel like I didn't have a big, like, Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you. It was much more of, like, a very subtle conversation, and I think, for me personally, like, my, like, Middle Eastern culture, like, heavily influenced the way I came out, personally.
And what about you, Beck?
Well, it's interesting. I don't share this pretty often, but when I was really young, to probably like middle school to high school, I actually identified as a boy. And I remember at school, I tried to tell like everyone. My mom let me cut my hair really short when I was like 6, 7, and I went to school, and I went to a new school, and it was my chance to tell everyone that I was a boy, and I did, and I had a different name, and it just didn't last because I think at that point people just didn't understand back then, in the late 90s, early 2000s. So unfortunately, that kind of just was something that I held on to. Like, I'm like, okay, this is me. I know who I am. I had friends that were like accepted me as one of the guys. That was awesome. And then things just kind of changed over time. Eventually, I kind of had this pressure to. I do have a feminine side, so I wouldn't say it wasn't like me at all. It's just I felt like a pressure to really drop everything masculine about myself and try to, sadly in a way, conform, I guess, and present very feminine. I went years. I grew my hair out late high school, and I went years kind of under that pressure, kind of every day, like, okay, almost being afraid, like, am I acting too masculine? Am I looking too masculine? Because I just didn't feel like, I felt like androgyny and looking masculine. It felt like something that I didn't feel like I could be. And so years later, and I finally, like, when I found out the word non-binary, I'm like, oh my God, that's me, I think having terminology and having exposure is huge for people, to be able to be seen, to be able to understand identity. And then, I've said this before, but Yasmin's been like super helpful for me. They kind of helped. They really helped me with understanding and kind of coming out. I sort of tiptoed out of coming out. I kind of shared things a little bit, like told my parents I'm kind of gender fluid, and eventually I was a lot more open. But I took my time. I'm still coming out to people. Really, it doesn't always come up, but sometimes I think friends know and they don't. So I'm still coming out, I guess. But yeah, it's been a journey.
And what I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, but I'm really proud of you, I must say that. And when it comes to your parents, as we know, the culture is quite different from India to US or UK. So what is it like there with parents? How accepting are they?
It varies.
Yeah, it varies so much that for me it was funnily enough, it was more of a struggle with my mom, who's white, and dealing with the femininity, and like we really had to work through that. And I think because actually I told them, like, I was kind of nervous to send them they said because I haven't told them the words or the pronouns, because they get it in their own way. Like, I get men's clothes for Christmas, and my mom thought she was like teaching me something when she told me about androgynous hairstyles with long hair, and it was cute because it was like this moment of like they get it and they accept it.
Very cute.
Yeah, and And so I think for me, just it's been a thing where, because I was also like back in the same way where I just told my parents constantly, like, I want to be a boy, I want to be a boy, I want to be a boy, like constantly. I'm like so surprised that they didn't just assume I was going to be trans, because like we're fully transgender, because I was not shy about telling them that at all. And they really allowed me to be who I was as a kid, being like, we both actually, Beck and I happened to do martial arts, and which was really nice to have, for me at least, to have like a masculine background. But they accept it. But I know the other people, like I'll see on social media where their parents like get the pronouns, and like, so it's more so, I think it's probably more acceptable here because like we have more examples of that in everyday life. Because it also just depends where you're from. Like, I'm from Orange County, which is really conservative. Everyone thinks like California is automatically super liberal and left-wing, but I'm from an extremely conservative area, so I did not feel comfortable because of my safety, like, was at, in question if I fully embraced myself down there, especially at the time. So that's my personal experience.
I think like I come from a Mormon background, and I'm laughing just because like I don't know. It's just funny to think like kind of like how I grew up, or certain things in my life and how it's changed. But my mom, when I was young, my mom was like, cool, dress however you want, I don't care, which was great. And she, like, I know that when the school called her and they're like, she's telling everyone her name, her name is Kevin, is what I went by. And my mom's like, so? So that was cool. But I think like, she kind of accepted like the idea of it without like, but I think as an adult, like actually coming out as non-binary, it was like a little confusing for them. I think I'm very lucky that even if they don't completely get it, or if they do, both parents are different, but they're accepting of it. I feel very fortunate. I know a lot of people aren't, and I know a lot of people get that kind of no matter where you live, you can have parents that don't accept it and then misgender you constantly and are like, no, I'm going to call you that because that's the name I gave you, and things like that. So it does vary. It definitely does. And I want to point out, like, there's this idea of like something that's helped me is that there are different levels of acceptance, as I've come to learn. It doesn't mean someone's all in or someone's all out. Someone can be accepting, but there's still like some issues, or they can be supportive, but they're still not getting either your pronouns, or they're not getting this, or they're like, well, because I had a response like, okay, well, what does that mean then about your sexuality, and like, what does your partner think, and my spouse? And I'm like, that's not that, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like these, there's still judgment sometimes, even if someone wants to be supportive. So anyone out there, just know, like, there's different levels of acceptance, and it's okay. Like, you'll find who's your core supporters, I think.
Yeah, and I do want to add, I do think,
Yeah.
like, I think, not that, I don't want to say it makes it easier, but because, femininity is seen as like the weaker gender in like a patriarchal society, I feel like non-binary, like assigned male at birth, I think their struggle is going to look a lot different, because like we got to be tomboys in the 90s because like, oh, they want to be like one of the guys, it's cute. But if a male child wants to wear a dress, or if a male teenager wants to wear makeup, it's a lot different than like us getting to do martial arts and like, oh, that's cool, like you're one of the cool girls. So I think there's just a lot of factors that go into it, even in like the US as well.
One thing I want to ask you guys particularly is when we talk about acceptance, Beck also pointed out the criterias. That's very correct actually. But if you talk about parents, do you think some or the other way, because they are nourished and they are born up in such a way that they do not understand this thing, what can we do for that? Do you think they are completely wrong, or actually is it that's the fault of the upbringing in a way?
Honestly, the biggest effect, I've seen with my parents is TV. And I think that, Beck and I happen to work in this medium, and because, like, they weren't, of course, it's like, oh, can you be out as an actor, right, in Hollywood, like 10 years ago? Would that have been okay? And my parents have liked The Blacklist and watched that, and they're like, every other episode there's a lesbian couple, like, you can be on that show. And they're watching the Krasinski Method, and it was before, like, the pronouns really came up. And my mom literally was like, because they're so cute, they're like, every show they like, they're like, you can be on that show, like, talk to that casting director. But there's I know, they're very supportive, which I appreciate, but there's a scene in the Krasinski Method where the teacher is saying, like, something about, like, he, and it cuts to, like, a male student, she, and it cuts to a female student, and then he, like, pauses and he's like, they, and it cuts to, like, an androgynous, like, female. And my mom was like, oh, when they did the they, you could be the they. So I think seeing it and seeing in a positive way, and seeing, because, like, when I came out as gay, one of the things my mom, she was, like, afraid of how the world was going to treat me. That was her biggest fear. But I think, at least for us as creators, I think normalizing it to parents, and if you're not a creator, like, find those shows. Like, Billions has a really awesome, like, non-binary character, and they literally have a scene where, like, they explain it, and everyone's like, okay, sure. And I think the more we advocate for that, the more we support non-binary artists in front of and behind the camera, I think that's really going to, like, help the boomer generation. Because if their kid is the only one they know who's like that, they're probably going to be like, is my kid alone? Is my kid have a problem? Are they going to be bullied? Are they going to be harassed? So knowing that there's more of us out there, because, like Beck said, that's one of the reasons why we made this, to be like, hey, look, we exist. So I think for me, that's, like, really the biggest thing I've seen help my parents grow.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think, too, it's hard because everyone will have different reactions from parents. I think, if possible, just try to reinforce with being a little patient, too. I've heard this before, and in case this helps anyone, sometimes your parents just need time to understand and figure it out, and sometimes that doesn't mean that they don't accept you, it just means they need time. So I think reminding them, like, this is who I am, go ahead and ask me questions, I'm still who I am, who you know me as, and just, yeah, I think it's hard, probably, but, just have a little bit of patience and stay true to who you are. And I think sometimes time is on your side.
Yeah, I think hinting at it can also help, because this person was specifically referring to coming out with your sexuality. It's a pretty, like, I apologize to whoever said it. I don't know you. But it was something like, it took 20 years to accept who you are. You have to give people in your life more than, like, 2 minutes. And gender is literally rooted in every single concept of our society. It is so ingrained that I think it's more confusing for people to understand if they've never been exposed. So if you are a non-binary kid out there who you're trying to figure out how to do it, start dressing more androgynously. Like, comment that you like certain looks, or get your parents to watch, like, a certain show that has something, and start putting it in, like, their minds, like building seeds, so that you don't have to always have a big coming out that's like, I'm this, and because it can be a shock to the system, especially if they're older and they've never experienced, like, 60-year-old parents in, like, Arkansas may not know any queer people.
Following to that, what advice would you two give to the young people in the community who are still struggling with their identities, the pronouns? What advice would you give to them?
I think the two biggest pieces of advice I would give is to remind people that non-binary does not have one look. Funnily enough, I think Beck and I are kind of the stereotype look.
Yeah.
But non-binary does not have one look. The point is that you are outside of the binary. So if one day you feel like wearing makeup and heels and the next you want to butch it up, you don't feel like you're betraying yourself. Gender is fluid. And also you're allowed to have multiple pronouns. You know, you can be a they, them, and a she, her, or a he, him, or you can be all the pronouns. Like, you don't have to box yourself and, you know, experiment. You know, buy that makeup, like, get those shoes, you know, like, see what you look like in a wig with short hair, you know, get, like, a fake mustache and paint it on. Just, like, the world is at your fingertips now. And, like, I highly suggest Google top non-binary, like, characters and just keep watching that and know you're not alone and that you are not obligated to look any way. It's all about how you feel that day and how you want to express your gender.
Absolutely. No one should police your identity, is what I'm trying to say. Like, if you feel that way, then you are. I think, like, sometimes, at least in my past, I've had this almost like imposter syndrome, I think it's called, where I'm like, okay, but am I? Because, like, this and that, or, you know, like, you question things, and it's fine. Like, you can question anything you want, but it is how you feel. If you feel that you're non-binary, you're non-binary, and Yasmin's absolutely right. There's no one way to look like that. You know, I think also sexuality, because I think sometimes people equate gender with sexuality, and you know, I'm married to a cis man, and for a long time I was like, I don't know, like, you know, for some reason it kind of like was a struggle for me to kind of grasp onto that, but you don't have to be, and you know, my sexuality is very fluid, but basically it's whoever you are. Like, just because you're non-binary doesn't mean that, you know, it influences necessarily your sexuality. And you know, on top of that, I think, kind of like what Yasmin was saying, like, have fun with it, enjoy trying things out, and you don't have to choose and stick to it. I think that's important. I think everyone's like, oh my god, I have to know what pronoun I'm gonna have forever. I've changed my pronouns. Like, at first I didn't change it from my assigned pronouns, and then I did, and then now I like all of them. So, and sometimes with some groups I prefer they, them, you know, so it really is just like, you are allowed to evolve. I think that's a huge thing that I had to learn, is you can evolve. Things can change. I don't look like I did a few years, I don't feel like I did 2 years ago, something like that.
That's very important. I mean, kids these days, somehow I feel they beat themselves up to understand things. They are in a haste. So I think it's very important to take your time, because that's very rightly said that we evolve, everything changes with time. That's very true. So, you know, while we are talking about LGBT issues, many people have faced queerphobic people in their journey. Did you guys face? I'm sure you must have, but you want to talk about it?
Oh yeah, what was the question? It was what kind of people, you said?
So there are so many people who are queerphobic.
Oh, queerphobic.
And yes. So could you talk about it and tell us your bit of a story?
Like, I guess specifically with non-binary issues, just that I'll admit, I was surprised that I think the biggest pushback I had were from gay people. And I found a lesbian community when I moved to LA, and I really wanted to, because, you know, everyone watches the L Word and everyone wants that. And I was very surprised by the line of questions, because I feel like straight people were just like, okay, you're just more queer now. Like, they're like, okay, that's fine. But there's something I just found that was super, like, I literally, like, texting some people about it. I was, like, actually, like, in tears one night to, like, my roommate, who's a straight cis guy, and I was just like, I don't understand why there's such a pushback. And like literally the whole, like, oh, it's not grammatically correct, and it's like, it is. In English, you can use the they, them when you don't know the gender of somebody. The problem is when people think they know the gender of somebody, it somehow doesn't apply. And just being questioned if I actually am a lesbian. Am I going to transition? And then, people being like, well, I wouldn't want to date somebody like that. Or like, exploring, I've been really wanting to get more into like the process of getting top surgery, and just like I don't even want to tell any of my lesbian friends because I feel like that's going to be a pushback. So I found a weird thing where it's like the community I found like solace in, and like, yes, I get to be gay, like had a very weird pushback, and like, and it's not all of them, like some of them, like they really try, they like correct themselves, they're there, or after I feel like unnecessary conversations I didn't have to have, they accept it. Like it wasn't everybody, hopefully they don't see this and they're like offended by it, but like it's just a thing where I wasn't expecting like so much curiosity. And I think while I appreciate that people are interested, it's also weird feeling like a curiosity, kind of like using a word from the old freak shows. Because like sometimes it would be like I'm having a beer at a party and out of nowhere they're like, so blah 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 blah. And when you're new to being non-binary, you don't want to be the spokesperson for non-binary people. And especially when we were talking about how there's so many different types of non-binary people, but I felt like it wasn't quite as accepting. Like and I'm saying like a lot of, like there is a lot of lesbians I know who immediately were like, I got you, trans masculine center, I'm on it, they, them. Like there was a lot of support, but I found the most pushback I got was from the gay community, which was, I wasn't prepared for, because when you like you put up a shield when you interact.
It's actually very surprising to me as well, listening to that I thought they are the ones who are going to be more supportive, but I guess that's not the case always.
Well, it's like Beck was saying, gender and sexuality are two completely different things. They're not associated in the way people like think they are. So yeah, that was because I also just wasn't emotionally prepared to like that, because when you like have to tell somebody something, you're like, okay, I know this won't go well. Like I wasn't prepared for that, so that was like extremely disappointing with that community.
It's kind of varied. I feel like a lot of the time I feel very safe, which is very fortunate, but there's been times where and a lot of time I feel, and it's probably living in LA, honestly. I think people are generally pretty accepting here for the most part. But there's been times where, I've gone out with a couple of friends and like people like, I had two guys one time stop and just the looks they get, I don't know how to explain it, but like the looks they gave me, I just did not feel safe in a way. I almost was like, I just felt really uneasy. So there's like kind of like sometimes small things, but that can affect you. It definitely affected me. It just felt weird because I kept getting looks, and it just kind of felt aggressive, and I was like, this is I'm just trying to hang out with people and not get these weird looks. But and I don't know, sometimes people are confused. They're like, what? I don't know who I'm talking to right now, and it to me that's a little funny. I mean, it's kind of funny sometimes to confuse people. I'm like, okay, sure. But I think most of it came when I was younger, and I think that's why it was so hard for me to come out, was because before there was a word like really that circulated, like non-binary and or genderqueer or anything like that. When I was younger, I obviously was very masculine presenting and at times very androgynous, and I got a lot of jokes about that. I feel like it's just kind of people would. Family members would say things to me and kind of slight me here and there. So, and that's even before they knew. And I remember hearing years later that some of my family talked behind my back and was like, well, what do you think? Do you think she's a lesbian? Do you think she's trans? Like all these things, which is like, it's fine to wonder. I just didn't like that it had such a negative connotation, you know what I mean? Also, just ask me, So I think a lot of things that happened when I was younger kind of informed me now. So it's weird that like sometimes even before you're out, people can still pass judgment on you, and I think it does make it hard sometimes.
Now, sadly in India, I mean, I love my country, but there are certain issues which I think it's okay to talk about. So in India, sadly, there are parents, there are friends who think that, some of them, actually, I would not generalize, but some of them think it's a psychological problem. It's something like when you grow up, you might change your preferences. It's like you might just go for a conversion. Is it the same for your country and for your locality? Because I have just read a couple of stories like that. Would you like to comment on that?
I think it's similar still. I think there is a movement with younger, like Gen X parents who are very embracing of their kids. But I do think, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, like to get top surgery and to get assigned, like you have to go to a therapist and you have to get a letter from a therapist, like proving that you actually need it. And this is an issue, like the UK just decided not to go forward with allowing people to change their sex/gender without having hormones and surgery. And the problem is like it is not easy to get that in the US. Like, I mean, surgery can cost up to like $10,000, like just for top surgery. You have to get approval from therapy, so you need to get into a therapist, have health insurance, pay out of pocket. So I think there is an element of our society that is, well, what if you change your mind? Like I think kids are allowed to get sex changes here in the US with parental consent. And we also have puberty blockers, which I think is great. So at least like you can stop puberty if the child has to is being forced to wait until they're 18. But I do think, especially for kids, for tomboys, like everyone expects you to grow out of that phase, and I didn't. And because I did not grow out of that phase, it became an issue. And I can only speak to people in our age bracket, because to me it feels like the Gen Zers do have a much more supportive base. But yeah, when it comes to like getting medical things, you do have to actually be diagnosed with like gender dysphoria, which just makes the process longer and harder, and like every step of transitioning or changing like even your name is like such a struggle here.
Yeah, it is. I actually recently I have to update my driver's license. I saw that there's an option for non-binary. I got excited, and then it's like, oh, sorry, there's this whole other step of like a form, and I don't know, whatever. And I don't know if it's really that much of a, I don't know how hard it would be to do it, but to me, I was like, man, what difference does it really make on my driver's license? I mean, you've had a picture of me when I was like 16 for like how many years? I don't look like that anymore. Like, how accurate is this, right? So I don't know. I agree with what Yasmin was saying, and I think that it's getting a little better. I feel like there are resources and therapists that are seeing this as like, because I feel like when I was younger, I'm trying to remember the term that was thrown around, but it was something like mental something when it came to like gender identity. Yasmin, if you know it, help me out, but I'm trying to remember what it was.
I'm not
and
sure,
but
like, back when it was more classified as like a mental illness, back in like
yes,
and it was like, I think only the most recent, like, that big book that has like every medical diagnosis, it's like the END something. I think only the most recent version has taken like gender dysphoria. I put that in quotes because I think that might be what you're thinking of, and they still use that phrase, and there's something about the term gender dysphoria I don't like.
Yeah, it was dysphoria, but I think it was even more of a specific term where it sounded like you
like it's a mental illness.
Like it was incorrect.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So when I first read that, going through like trying to figure this out, even as an adult, it wasn't even that long ago that I had seen that online still, and I was like, what is this? So there is at least change. There is there are like, I think progress is being made here and there, yeah. And depending on what state you live in the US also affects that too here.
Especially with like conversion therapy. I think finally that's illegal across the country for minors, even though our vice president fully supports it and wants it to be implemented, which is great. But but that's for sexualities, because I'm sure that, like, I don't know if it extends to gender, because like they're like, you know, recently we passed that, like the Supreme Court ruled that you cannot be fired for being gay. So like 5 or 6 states went from that protection to the country, but now they have like the trans ban up, and it still doesn't protect transgender. It might protect transgender people, I'm not 100% sure, but like it's still, they can get evicted from homeless shelters. And so I think in our society we don't have that support system, and there's like an element of confirmation bias, right, where it's like, well, look at all these other kids that grew out of it. And I'm like, well, did they grow out of it, or were they just so socially pressured?
Forced it? Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I want to actually comment on that whole growing out of it. That is exactly how I felt too. And I think that it is harmful to think of this as like a child, like something that is fine if you're young, but then eventually you have to just figure it out. You know what I mean? And to kind of fit in the binary too. I think that's another thing that is hard, is sometimes people are like, well, I'm not either one, you know, I don't feel like I'm male or female, you know, like you don't have to be in each one, but it's so hard for people to conceptualize that. And so even in healthcare, it's hard too. A lot of like trans and non-binary people don't get the same care, or it's hard to get that kind of care, or to get checked on with certain issues that they might have, you know what I mean? So there's a huge gap.
Conversations, like we were talking about female healthcare specifically, literally right before this, where it's like,
yeah,
the question, because I'm on birth control because my uterus doesn't know what the fuck is going on. That's why I'm on it. And when I went to a gynecologist's office when I first moved to LA, they were like asking me about contraceptives and protection. I'm like, oh, I'm gay, I don't have sex with men. And they were literally, the woman was like, like she was so flustered. And I'm like, what is what is happening here? And like, you know, there's so many elements where it's like, you know, transgender men can, you know, still get pregnant, they can still get breast cancer, you know, especially if they hold on to breast tissue. And like, as a non-binary person who hasn't gone through surgery yet, I feel so uncomfortable going into like female healthcare. Like I can't imagine how a trans man would feel. Like,
yeah.
So I think it's like becoming a bit better as we see media and we see adults and we see people holding on to it, but I'm sure there are many, many children across the country that are being basically bullied by their parents into picking a gender, and they think they're helping their child.
So do you think the people in power, here I'm pointing out to people in political power per se, do they have you know, policies for the community they want to implement, and do they have a good manifesto for that, with elections coming you know, around like in just November?
Yes, so it depends, because like Democrats in California look different than Democrats in Georgia, they look different than Democrats in Washington, and look different from even LA to Seattle. And so I believe that, like, for the most part, the Democratic Party has taken a inclusive, positive stance, like wanting, like the Republican Party announced like last week that they were going to try to do the transgender ban on the military again, even though I think the Supreme Court ruled that transgender people can join the military, but they also apparently trying to overturn the gay marriage ruling is also back on their agenda. So I think that the Democratic platform has like a better understanding, but I don't know if they have, like, for example, like teaching LGBT sex ed and teaching LGBT history. I don't think that's on it. Like, as far as I know, it's not on people's agenda. And they tried, I think, in Sacramento. I think Jerry Brown did pass LGBT, our old governor, history, but it's not dug into. Like, I don't hear people talking about on their political agendas that they want to, like, protect transgender people from being evicted from homes or, you know, shelters. But they're stepping towards it. The right, not so much.
Beck and Yasmin, coming back to your channel, I hear that you have a film in production, so tell us about that a bit.
I have a short film in post-production that I actually shot in January, right before the pandemic, so I'm so grateful. I couldn't even imagine dealing with shooting something and it shut down. So I'm very
Lucky.
grateful.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's called The Jessicas, and it follows these two girls named Jessica, and they very much talk like, oh my god, Jessica, like totally Jessica, like yeah, Jessica. And it's wonderful because I got a new composer, and like even in his email he's like, oh my god, like totally. It's like so infectious to talk that way, and it was just a really beautiful, amazing set with like mostly like people of color and like females and like production and stuff, and like our guys who were there were just lovely. And there's like a big twist in it, and I am going to hopefully finish it this year. Obviously there's been lots of snags in post because of COVID, but I'm going to actually use that as like a concept, proof of concept, and pitch it as a series. So it's, to give you an idea, it's a little bit of like Insatiable meets Assassination Nation, so it gets a little bloody, which is fun.
And where do we get to see that?
I'm actually not 100% sure yet. I'll probably do an announcement of like a private screening, and like probably have a temporary link. And I'd like to, because I was hoping to do it at my acting studio, but probably do a Zoom Q&A. Hopefully it will be done soon, but I have to like talk to some people to see how much I can put it out there, if I still want to pitch it and sell it to something. But I'm sure I'll do a screening soon, so keep an eye out. There is an Instagram for it. It's called, I believe, The Jessicas, the series. We don't post a lot. We don't post at all, actually, but it's there for when updates eventually come out, and we will not follow you back because the Jessicas just don't follow people.
Okay. Now Beck and Yasmin, you both are writers, okay? So tell us a bit about that. How do you process everything? You write the content together for your channel, and what is the inspiration? Of course, you must be facing issues and real life stories, but apart from that, is there any source of inspiration that you follow? How does that go?
In terms of like our writing process, I'd say I think we gelled really well together. I think that's great. It's not always easy to necessarily like right off the bat, I think, be on the same page, and I feel like so much of it we just were, which is awesome. We got together, pre-COVID. We got together and just talked about like what we want it to be, what we want to represent, like, and then from there, I mean, we came up with, I don't know how many total episodes now. I think we have like we've only shot I think 8, but we have more than that, and we kind of both would like come together, go through the script, work on it. I think that it felt to me really seamless. I think we're both really good about being like, all right, let's make this clearer, or let's try this, and push each other a little bit, and know when it's like, oh, that's good. No, let's not like tweak it if it's working, things like that. So I had a lot of fun working with Yasmin, and I think it's so nice too when someone's a great writer and you're working with them and you're like, oh my god, I love that. Like that made me laugh. Like that moment was great. It's awesome to work with someone who's a good writer.
One thing. Has there ever been a writer's block for any one of you? Because I also write, but there are times when I do have like a writer's block. Have you faced that?
With writing, just make yourself write something. Even if you're not gonna make it, even if you know it's horrible, nobody has to see it, just do it. And I've actually found, because my roommate's a writer, and he personally finds that reading books actually help him more than watching TV. Because it's important to watch what you want to write for. But when you're reading words, like a book, it triggers another part of your imagination, and it triggers another part of your mind. So I found that when I like come into writer's block, I either just will write for the sake of writing, and I'll just write a bunch even if I know it's terrible, because there could be something good and you're doing it. And also like calling up a friend and being like, hey, I'm stuck at this part and I'm not sure what to do, and like throwing out ideas even if you use none of it. I think it's about working other parts of your mind and remembering it's part of the process.
Getting something on the page, like what Yasmin was saying, being okay with being like, you know what, I'm just gonna write crap right now. Like if you get to a point where you're like, and then what? Sometimes, at least for me, I'll try to self-edit before I even start typing. I'm like, no, not that. Okay, and I'm thinking in my head, and I'm not writing anything. So sometimes I'm like, I'm just gonna finish the scene. No, I'll rewrite it, and then like sometimes I'll have to rewrite a whole scene like multiple times. Like I wrote a play recently, well, first draft, right? But I rewrote a long scene like 7 times. Literally, I had like 7 times because I'm like, it's just not right. It's not what it's gonna be. And I think just allowing yourself to do that and know that you can throw it away. No one's gonna see that if you don't want them to. That's part of it, right? It's to kind of just force the words on the page, or do it writing exercises on your character, or whatever. Just try to be active instead of just in your head, and try not to let that like inner critic, attack something before you've even done it.
Yeah, and I know a lot of writers are not also actors, but like I find acting out the scenes help. Even if I don't use the dialogue, I like, ain't nobody gotta see what you're doing. Just act like a crazy person and have a conversation with yourself and see what flows. And I think putting yourself into it can help too. It's just finding what works for you. And even if like, you might just have to be like, you know what, when COVID is over, take yourself on a date. Just you go to a museum, go out to the park, and just like break out of whatever habit you're doing. Because they say that a lot of times people do go to like coffee shops to write because there's like, you're in a new environment. So there's like an evolutionary thing happening where your senses like trigger because like, ooh, you're in a new place. What's going to happen? New predators. So I think it's like, and I'm a homebody. Like if I don't leave my room for a week, I'm like I flourished in quarantine. Like I like to stay home, but not everyone's like that. And I think getting inspired by history and art and like dance and stuff, I think there's ways. You just gotta find what works for you and just mix it up a little.
That's great. Now, Yasmin, I just checked your Insta account, which has a decent amount of followers. So, has it been difficult to get those followers on your channel? How long did it take to even gain like 1K followers?
It took a while. And it was not easy. I definitely went through like phases of being like, I'm going to like a bunch of photos and like follow people and get follow backs. And then, because once you get to like a certain, and I would like reach out to like shout out pages. Like there's a bunch of like tomboy shout out pages. And some of them that have grown really big now actually even charge people because they know that they can help get followers. And I don't remember the first K. I mean, it was a long time ago. I mean, I've had the same account since college. But once you get to a certain point, it helps to spiral. And I also actually was friends with some people who were like big YouTubers and had that, so getting tagged in their stuff helps. It's like you have to get it from everywhere because you know, even if you wanted to pay for like a third-party app, Instagram blocks it now. And you can't act like a bot. You can't go through and follow a bunch of people yourself because you'll also get flagged. But for people looking to get more followers, right now Reels on Instagram is actually, they're getting pushed like crazy because it's Instagram's answer to TikTok. And like, I posted a Reel and like, it has over 100,000 views, which is like crazy. It's literally doing better on Instagram than TikTok, which is what I made it for. The thing, it's like, it's really nice to have, and like, because the algorithm on Instagram, it's like confusing and difficult, and like people don't always see, like your followers don't always see your stuff, which is why like I'm constantly trying to push them to either our Instagram, or now I've been more focused on their story because we're currently releasing stuff. Because when I posted that Reel, there were people who are like, oh my gosh, like I've been following you and like I haven't seen you, like I didn't even know you cut your hair, and I did that like a year and a half ago. Like they're just not seeing it. So you just gotta be like savvy and be willing to put the time in. And now that I have enough, like I don't have to really do anything. It just kind of keeps growing on its own, which is nice.
But But you know, have you guys faced this? I mean, oh my god, I have faced this. People follow me, okay, and then when I follow them back, they unfollow me, which is like, I don't know, why did they even do that in the first place?
That's why they did
Did
it.
you face that ever?
That's why they did it. They followed you literally just to get you to follow them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something about Instagram that, like, unlike TikTok, which I think has just like a healthier community, like, unfortunately, you have to have at least 10,000 followers to be able to post videos that are longer than a minute. So we don't have any of our content on there. But people on TikTok, I feel like, just follow to follow. But people on Instagram, they want to like follow less people than they're following. It's like, it's about a look. Instagram feels like the LA club scene, but on the internet. It's all about how you look, how popular you are, which is unfortunate because you have to always make sure your content looks really good in order to get like the attention.
I do want to add, like, for our Instagram, for our show, we're interested in, like, building community too, and like actually, trying to like be connected to people. So that's something that we don't actively do, is like follow and follow. We don't like to do that.
You guys are good people.
Well, it's just like, it really is more than just, we want to share with people, and we want a community, and we want people to like feel seen by what we do too. We hope that, so we want to kind of like push for that, and yeah, so if you just, if anyone's watching this and you feel connected to us, like, feel free to reach out also.
That's very sweet. You guys also have a YouTube channel. What about that? Why have you faced that you have a lot of followers on Instagram but not as much as subscribers out there? Do you think there is a barrier in between, and what that possibly could be?
Well, one thing we thought about when we did this was making sure that we kind of wanted to be on the shorter side of the episodes, so that people could watch it, not sit down and watch like a 20-minute, but that's great too. But we thought, let's try for some shorter episodes that people could like pull up when they're on their phone and see it and be like, oh, okay, and start with that as like our proof of concept and something to share with everyone. So we thought, Instagram kind of made sense because you can kind of find it through hashtags. You can just scroll up and you can see it real quick and then maybe view more. So thinking about it, we thought about a few different platforms, and we want to be on a couple. We're on Facebook as well. We're on YouTube. I think Instagram was just kind of our first push, and we'd like to get more people to kind of view on YouTube, but basically just making it accessible to anywhere people can find us. So yeah, I think we would love to have more people connect on YouTube, and that's something we're looking into.
Yeah, I think what's also really great about YouTube and Facebook is they have closed captioning. And we went in and we edited all the closed captioning on there. So that's another reason why we wanted to use those platforms. And and like Beck said, we really haven't been pushing YouTube. That's kind of like our next like social media thing, is to actually kind of try to start working with the algorithms. But queer content on YouTube, it's not necessarily going to be seen. First of all, any small creators are going to have a struggle because now YouTube they push bigger stuff. The algorithm has changed drastically. I used to like do YouTube videos, and small creators were able to get seen a lot more, but now people go to YouTube to catch up on CNN and SNL and like The Daily Show and stuff. But also there was a period of time where YouTube was actually hiding queer content, and it was like a big thing. A lot of creators left. And so one of the reasons why we also weren't necessarily pushing and engaging it is just because when I had spoken to people who worked with YouTube, you need to basically push traffic to your channel as a queer channel. And you probably really have to do it for any new channel just because it's so saturated now. But I think YouTube is not necessarily the place for queer content right now. So we decided to focus on Instagram.
That's great. So guys, thank you so much both of you for joining me today, sparing your precious time for this interview. It was great to have both of you, and I would like you to actually request all my viewers to, ask them, follow my channel, and you know the drill. So do that for me.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I enjoyed this so much. Thank you.
This was really great. Thank you for reaching out and accommodating with our schedules and things that came up. We appreciate your patience.
Thank you so much.